Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer. The name evokes a chilling terror, a name synonymous with depravity and the darkest corners of human nature. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer terrorized Milwaukee, Wisconsin, etching his name into the annals of criminal history. He was not merely a murderer, he was a necrophiliac, a cannibal, a monster who preyed on vulnerable young men, lured them back to his apartment of horrors, and subjected them to unimaginable acts. Dahmer's crimes, characterized by their brutality and depravity, shocked a nation and left an indelible scar on the city of Milwaukee. Dahmer's story, like many who tread a dark path, began with an unsettling normality. He was born into a seemingly typical American family, with parents who, on the surface, appeared to provide a stable environment. Born in 1960, his early years seemed unremarkable. He lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood surrounded by the idyllic scenes of 1960s America. However, beneath the surface lurked a darkness, perhaps stemming from a tumultuous family life and undiagnosed mental health issues. His parents' frequent arguments and eventual divorce left a deep impact on young Jeffrey. The signs were subtle at first, a fascination with animal bones, a growing introversion. He would spend hours alone, collecting and dissecting roadkill, a hobby that alarmed those who knew him. But these early red flags would later prove to be grim foreshadowing of the horrors to come. His interest in the macabre was not just a phase, but a precursor to his later, more disturbing obsessions. As Dahmer grew older, his fascination with death morphed into something more sinister. His teenage years were marked by increasing isolation and a deepening obsession with control and domination. He began to fantasize about control, domination, and the possession of lifeless bodies. These fantasies grew more vivid and consuming, driving him further into his own dark world. His descent into darkness was gradual but relentless, fueled by a potent cocktail of repressed desires, mental illness, and societal isolation. The boy who once seemed merely odd had transformed into a young man with a terrifying secret life, one that would eventually shock the world. The year was 1978, a time of cultural shifts and societal changes. Dahmer, just 18 years old, committed his first murder, marking the beginning of a dark and twisted journey. The victim, Stephen Hicks, was a hitchhiker lured back to Dahmer's childhood home under the pretense of friendship and shared drinks. This initial act of violence served as a horrifying catalyst, unleashing the monster that had been festering within Dahmer for years. Dahmer's desires, long suppressed and hidden from the world, now had a horrifying outlet, leading him down a path of no return. What began as a single murder quickly spiraled into a terrifying pattern of escalating depravity, shocking the nation. Over the next 13 years, Dahmer honed his gruesome craft, becoming more methodical and calculated with each passing year. He lured young men, often marginalized and vulnerable, back to his apartment, promising companionship, alcohol, or a place to stay. Once inside, they became victims of his twisted desires, unable to escape the horrors that awaited them. Murder became routine for Dahmer. Dismemberment, a macabre ritual he performed with chilling precision. Dahmer sought to preserve his victims, to keep them close, even resorting to cannibalism in a desperate attempt to exert ultimate control over their remains, a testament to his escalating depravity and madness. Dahmer's crimes were calculated, chillingly methodical. He would typically target young men, often of Asian or African descent, whom he found attractive. Luring them back to his apartment with promises of money or alcohol, Dahmer would drug their drinks, rendering them unconscious and helpless. Once his victims were incapacitated, the true horror would begin. Dahmer would strangle them, often engaging in necrophilia afterwards. Driven by a desire to possess his victims utterly, he would dismember their bodies, often keeping body parts as grisly souvenirs. He experimented with preserving human remains, attempting to create his own macabre museum of horror. The horror unfolds, the discovery at 928 North 25th Street. On July 22, 1991, Dahmer's reign of terror came to an abrupt end. Tracy Edwards, a young man who had narrowly escaped Dahmer's clutches, flagged down police officers. Edwards told a chilling story of being drugged and nearly murdered. He led police back to Dahmer's apartment 213 at 928 North 25th Street. What they discovered inside was the stuff of nightmares. The stench of decay permeated the air. Polaroid photographs of dismembered bodies littered the apartment. A refrigerator contained a human head. The full scope of Dahmer's depravity was laid bare, a testament to the depths of human darkness. Justice and outrage. Dahmer's arrest and confession. Confronted with the irrefutable evidence, Dahmer confessed to his crimes. His confession, delivered with a chilling calmness, sent shockwaves through Milwaukee and beyond. He described his acts in graphic detail, his words painting a horrifying picture of his descent into madness. The public was horrified, both by the nature of the crimes and by Dahmer's apparent lack of remorse. Dahmer's confession was a chilling window into the mind of a monster. He spoke of his desire to create sex zombies, his victims transformed into passive vessels for his own gratification. He detailed his experimentation with cannibalism, his attempts to preserve flesh, all driven by a twisted desire for control and companionship. Unmasking a monster. The trial in Dahmer's psyche. Dahmer's trial, which began in January 1992, was a media sensation. The world watched in horror as the details of his crimes were revealed. Expert witnesses provided insight into Dahmer's psyche, attempting to unravel the motivations behind his horrific acts. Some argued he suffered from borderline personality disorder and necrophilia, while others pointed to a severe antisocial personality disorder. The question of Dahmer's sanity became a central point of contention. Was he a calculating monster fully aware of his actions, or was he driven by an uncontrollable compulsion? The jury ultimately found Dahmer to be sane, holding him responsible for his crimes. The price of evil sentencing and life behind bars. On February 17, 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, a total of 957 years in prison. His crimes, deemed too heinous for any possibility of parole, ensured he would spend the rest of his days behind bars. Life in prison offered little respite for Dahmer. Haunted by his crimes and ostracized by fellow inmates, he found himself living in a self-imposed isolation. His infamy followed him, a constant reminder of the horrors he had inflicted. Legacy of a monster: lasting impacts and lessons learned. The case of Jeffrey Dahmer sent shockwaves through society, forcing a reassessment of how such evil could exist. It highlighted the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness, the vulnerability of marginalized communities, and the urgent need for greater awareness and intervention. In the aftermath of Dahmer's crimes, law enforcement agencies implemented new protocols for missing persons cases. The case also sparked a national conversation about homophobia, racism, and the systemic biases that allowed Dahmer's crimes to continue undetected for so long. Seeking understanding, the importance of exploring the dark side. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer is not one of entertainment. It is a stark reminder of the capacity for evil that exists within humanity. His actions were horrific, and the impact on his victims and their families is immeasurable. Yet, by studying his life and crimes, we can gain insights into the psychological and social factors that contribute to such behavior. While it is tempting to turn away from such darkness, it is precisely by confronting these uncomfortable truths that we can begin to understand and, hopefully, prevent such atrocities in the future. By acknowledging the existence of such evil, we can work towards creating systems and support networks that identify and intervene before it's too late. Exploring the dark side of human nature is not about glorifying violence or sensationalizing tragedy. It is about facing the reality of our world and striving to make it better. It is about learning from the past to protect the future. It is about seeking understanding, about delving into the complex interplay of factors that can lead an individual down a path of destruction. This includes examining mental health issues, societal pressures, and environmental influences that may contribute to such actions. By examining the roots of evil, we can better equip ourselves to recognize warning signs, challenge societal biases, and advocate for a more just and compassionate world. Through education, awareness, and proactive measures, we can hope to prevent future tragedies and foster a society that values empathy and understanding. Further exploration resources for deeper insight. For those seeking a deeper understanding of the Jeffrey Dahmer case, there are numerous resources available. Court transcripts, police reports, and psychological evaluations provide a wealth of information about Dahmer's crimes and the factors that contributed to his descent into darkness. Documentaries and films offer a visual and often harrowing account of the case, while books and articles provide in-depth analysis and expert perspectives. By engaging with these resources, we can continue to learn from this tragic chapter in human history and work towards preventing future tragedies.